about 8 months ago, I had a severe drinking problem. But I'm here to tell you about what God's done in my life. My childhood was essentially unremarkable. God gave me a good mom and stepdad who did their best to raise me with honest, hardworking values. My childhood was not perfect, but looking back, I know my parents did the best they knew how. There was not a lot of God in my house, but my grandma and grandpa were God-fearing farmers, and they made sure I knew enough to ask questions later in life. As a young boy, I did occasionally go to Sunday school. There I met some amazing people who were so kind and good-hearted. I always liked the atmosphere there, though I understood very little about why I was there. I had a Sunday school teacher named Mrs. Holloway. One time she gave me one of those little red Bibles with the New Testament and Psalms in it, one of these. God would use that Bible in a profound way many years later, as you'll see. I started drinking and smoking pot at the age of 13. That was an easy decision for me because all my friends were doing it and I found out I was particularly good at it. Plus I had a job at 13, so I was always able to supply the money for the drugs and the alcohol, which made me quite popular with the older crowd. After graduation, I went to Navy boot camp in San Diego. My drinking started to become a real problem at this time. As soon as I graduated boot camp, I discovered Tijuana, Mexico, where an 18-year-old could drink with abandon, and I did. I spent every weekend there and honestly remember very little of it. I went home the first year for Christmas and looked up my high school girlfriend in college. 30 days after returning to San Diego, I got a phone call and found out I was going to be a dad. When I told my mom, she said, well, there goes medical school. My stepdad made some kind of crude comment, I don't remember. I hung up the phone and told my buddy, I'm getting married and will be a dad in 9 months. He said I was crazy. But I knew that I didn't want my kid growing up in a broken home, so I was determined to do the right thing. I went home a month later, married her in my mom's living room, and we moved back to San Diego. 5 years later, we had another baby, and at that time I left the military to raise my kids in my hometown. As you can imagine, by this time my marriage was a failure. She was having an affair. She didn't know I knew. I didn't know what to do about it, but I didn't want to not see my daughters every day, so I swallowed my pride and decided to try to fix it. In hindsight, that was a fool's errand because I did not know God and I was trying to do everything on my own. I should mention that I was drinking more than ever. Drinking beer became an everyday affair and I would often drink until I passed out. In 2004, I was in the throes of depression with a failed marriage. I remember one March driving home from work and just crying my eyes out. There was snow on the ground and suddenly, God put a rainbow in the sky. I had never seen a rainbow in the snow. And I was in awe. I remembered Mrs. Holloway, my Sunday school teacher that I mentioned, telling me the story of what the rainbow means, and I decided right then and there I needed a change. I got home and told my wife that I wanted to go to church. Her response was, you drink beer and now you want to go to church. How small-minded and dumb can you be? I said, you don't have to go, but I am and would like to take the girls with me. She refused, stating that they were too young and she didn't want them brainwashed. So that Sunday, I went to church alone. I don't remember the sermon, but I remember feeling at peace for the first time in a very long time. And I remember feeling a strange feeling of hope, which I had not experienced in many years. There was an altar call at the end of the service. I found myself at the altar, though I do not remember standing up or walking to the altar. I just couldn't imagine being anywhere else. I was baptized several months later. My salvation was real, but my habits and ways took a long time to change. I didn't tell my wife because I was afraid of the ridicule. I just quietly started reading my Bible when she wasn't around and praying when I was alone. The Bible says there will be trials for believers, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was about to go through the biggest trial in my life. In November of 2004, I received a call that I was being sent to Iraq with the Marine Corps unit that I was assigned to in the Navy Reserves. I left home in December of 2004 for Iraq. My excitement was high. Man, I was pumped up. I didn't think I would see much fighting as a reservist. Boy, was I wrong. They say there are no atheists in foxholes, and I'm here to tell you that is mostly the truth. Getting shot at and blown up daily has a way of forcing you to reach out to God. When I look back, God was working in my life even before I found him. I have no doubt he placed that rainbow in my path to bring me close to him in preparation for combat. During my time in Iraq, I was in heavy combat almost daily. I lost 48 good friends on that deployment, many of whom I personally tried to save and failed. The records say I saved many lives with medical intervention, but those 48 were all that mattered to me. I constantly prayed to God to guide my hands and to spare my Marines. Sometimes he did, but 48 times, he didn't, and I lost them. As you can imagine, I was very angry with God over this, and it lasted for many years afterward. Where was God in all this death and destruction? He was in the hopeful eyes of small Iraqi children who looked at us with hope and desperation. I found him quite loudly one morning after 3 days of heavy combat in the town of Haqqaniya. We were hunkered down in a bombed-out building, and there had been no fighting for approximately 5 hours. We were still on edge, but enjoying the silence when we heard a bunch of commotion across the street. We cautiously looked out with our weapons ready to go and saw 3 kids playing with a soccer ball. I had not seen any children in this town except for a pair huddling in the corner when we kicked in a door. Those kids playing was profound. To us, it meant the bad guys had left, and to me, it meant God was showing me something good in the midst of pure hell. It gave me hope. There was another night in Haditha when I was assigned to a quick reaction force. This is like being on call on your day off. And we were called to support fighting in Haditha. We loaded up in AAVs, which are light armored vehicles designed to transporting troops, and went to the scene. When we arrived, the back of the AAV went down. My first glimpse revealed a burning American Humvee and a U.S. Marine in the midst of it. My sergeant was yelling for everyone to get out of the vehicle and move to the building across the street. I remember seeing and hearing bullets flying in all directions and thought, I'm never going to make it through that. I didn't. I said a quick prayer, and Jesus carried me through to the Marine in the burning Humvee. I tugged him out, but he was gone. This was all Jesus. I was paralyzed with fear, but he carried me. That's the only explanation possible. Another time that God intervened was when we were sent on a night mission and my point man forgot his night vision goggles. I gave him mine because he was the point man and needed them more than I did. 1 hour later, he took a bullet directly through those goggles strapped to his helmet. They slowed it down just enough that it only partially penetrated the helmet, and he was unscathed miraculously. Again, that was God. I finally came home in September of 2005 with severe PTSD, and my drinking got way worse. It was so bad that I had a routine of doing 6 shots of bourbon every evening before I went to school. I was the teacher. I spent the years of 2005 to 2014 in a downward spiral. I got divorced, moved in with someone else, had a son, lost my job, foreclosed on my house, my son and his mother moved out, and I was now in a committed relationship with alcohol. At the end, I was homeless and sleeping on family and friends' couches. I was so angry with God for not taking my life in Iraq. After all, I kept telling myself I had just done the most important thing I was ever going to do in my life. What was left? I have peaked. Why am I still here? I still believed, but I was in hiding and using alcohol to drown out my sorrows. Again, in spite of my sinful ways, God intervened. I received a random call from a recruiting company recruiting people in my field. They had found an old resume online and reached out to me to see if I was looking for a job. What I didn't know was that this call would take me to Toledo, where I not only got a job, but met the love of my life, Dawn. God had prepared a person who could help me heal and sent me to Toledo to meet her. We met at my new job and quickly fell in love. While I was determined to change and do better this time, I was still drinking heavily. I was a functioning alcoholic. I want to stop here and summarize what God did for me, even though I was doing nothing for him. He sent a rainbow which ultimately led to my salvation. He sent me to Iraq and spared my life against all odds. He found me a job when I was homeless and broke. He led me to Toledo, where he introduced me to the woman who could help me heal. Now, during those years, I didn't recognize God and all that. I thought I was doing it. I thought I was making it happen. I know better now. I will end with where I started, the Little Red Bible. Honestly, I had not laid eyes on that Bible since I was probably 14. I didn't know it still existed. One day, about 5 years ago, my teenage son came for a visit. He brought me that Bible with my name written in it and said he found it in an old box of stuff at his mom's house. I threw it in the center console of my truck and never thought another thing about it until a trip back from Indianapolis. I was alone and doing 85 in the fast lane in Indiana. I was a fast driver and was comfortable at that speed. Suddenly a feeling of fear came over me and I was very uncomfortable driving that fast. I merged into the slower lanes and set my cruise control at the speed limit. 2 hours later, I came upon a traffic jam that had all lanes at a dead stop. I found out later there had been a 2-car accident with fatalities. While stopped in traffic, I was in a dead zone. No phone service, no radio stations would come in. Out of boredom, I picked up that little Bible and I randomly opened it. I began to read one of Paul's letters and suddenly the words, "Be the example," jumped out at me. I instantaneously felt guilt for the example I was setting for my family. I resolved right then and there to lead my family back to church. The following Sunday, we found ourselves at Bedford Alliance Church. By this time, I had realized that my ways had never worked, so I made a commitment to completely following Jesus. Through my faith, God gave me the strength to finally quit drinking. He gave me an extended church family, and most importantly, he has blessed our family beyond measure. I am at peace for the first time in my whole adult life. I know that my addiction will always be a part of my story, but Jesus is the story now, and in hindsight, he always has been.